With Peter Mandelson in the spotlight with the Epstein files, it was only natural that his former boss, Tony Blair, would show up too. Here is an extraordinary conversation between the paedophile financier Epstein and Ehud Barak, the former Israeli Prime Minister.
Yeah, kind of advice. That's also something that I've heard from you, or from Terry, I believe, that Tony Blair, for example, is doing some probably 11 million per year from the Kazakhstan government just to give them advice, to help them with lobbying in some NGOs and UN organizations.
Tony has turned funny. So I don't know what Tony's doing for money. And I don't know if the money Tony is getting is actually to Tony or to somebody else.
Who could it be?
Sorry?
Who could it be?
Because it goes to Tony because they need help, so Tony gets to pay some of the money to somebody else. Because I hear gigantic numbers given to Tony. 5 million here, 10 million here, 5 million there. Tony's not making $30 million a year.
Yeah, but he became quite, I can judge from the style of his watching.
Yes, but he's making 10 million a
Yeah,
year.
probably. Yeah, but probably he get the money and he leaves some of it with others. Yeah, probably some of the providers.
Your eyes don't deceive you if you're watching this, by the way. You'd see that whole recording was 3 hours, 26 minutes, and it's all recorded. So clearly lots of this is to entrap people and get compromat. I think that's inarguable. Tony has turned funny. I don't know if Tony is getting the money. He probably leaves it with other people. What others? What does turning funny mean? It sounds like something Robert De Niro would say in Goodfellas. He's turned funny. Sounds like a gangster. He sounds like Joe Pesci. If he's only seeing 10 million of 30 million, where is the rest going? We're quite normal people, I think, at Novara Media. I'm sure you are as well. It's not a normal thing. Well, he got 30 million, but 20 million went elsewhere. To who? Or at least, where did Epstein think the rest was going? That's the important question to ask. Today, it's widely reported that Blair is worth tens of millions of pounds, although that figure never seems to change. Despite the fact that the guy has charged hundreds of thousands of pounds for a single speech for almost 20 years, is the claim being made here that Blair is helping launder cash? I'm not saying that's the case. I just want to know what was being asserted in that recording. After all, Kazakhstan, as one example used by Epstein, has often been used as a laundromat to clean Russian money. And Blair started to work with the Kazakhs from 2008, offering advice for 6 years at least, charging around £5 million a year, which may be where Epstein is getting that £30 million figure from. What advice is he giving for that money? For £5 million, $7 million a year. Blair has claimed he didn't personally benefit from those deals, but the point still stands. Where precisely was the money going? In a way, if Blair wasn't getting it, that's an even more important question. Epstein, in this extraordinary clip, offers a theory of that. Potentially, the money was going to somebody else. Kieran, Tony's turned funny. What does that sentence mean?
Yeah, I mean, it should have been scripted it should be in a Scorsese film, that's for sure. I have no idea what it means, but I think I want to point to something that I'm right in saying you tweeted it the other day, Aaron, that this, bearing witness to all of this, is like beyond the left's wildest fever dream about how elites act and speak to each other behind closed doors. And I don't think that this being exposed in the way that it is necessarily speaks to how oracle-like, how oracular the left is. I think, actually, and again, this point sort of relates to what I was saying about being systemic, this is, if you have lots and lots of extremely wealthy people becoming more and more wealthy and powerful, and then you have politicians swarming around their hive and passing legislation or acting in public life in a way that's conducive to the ever greater concentration of wealth in that elite's hands, I don't think it takes a genius to figure out what's going on. Once you have all those pieces in play, I think you could then infer from that they are talking like this behind closed doors. 5 million, 10 million, Kazakhstan, they treat entire nation states like an extension of business. And they speak about those sums of money as though they're, Barak it's almost comic were it not so utterly obscene? I mean, it is comic. Ed Barak saying, I can tell by the style of his watches that he's earning more than 5 million a year. It's grotesque, but it's, as I said, yeah, it's confirmatory of the left's worst and most kind of excited fever dreams about what it is that elites get up to behind closed doors.
There's a great line, I can't remember who said it, but the strangest things don't need to be believable because they're true. It doesn't need to be believable because it's a fact, because it happened. I mean, I think Luigi Pirandello said something to that effect. The thing you said about Kazakhstan as well, that whole countries are just treated as an extension of business, is so true. I mean, did nobody think in 2008, I mean, I was 24 then, but was nobody saying in 2008, well, hold on, why are the Kazakhs giving Tony Blair 5 million a year for advice? What's he going to do? You grow up, you read The Economist magazine, you read the papers, and you just think, oh, right, that's just kind of what happens. Powerful people in politics get advice and they lobby. Tony Blair is not adding £5 million worth of value to Kazakhstan, obviously, every year. For 6 years. Who? £30 million he was being paid for what? You could give him a fifth of that. You could still get the guy. Something very strange is going on. Something really, really strange. Sticking with Blair and Epstein, the former PM says he met the paedophile financier only once. That was for half an hour in 2002. But it seems Epstein continued to speak about access to number 10 long after that. This email is from March 2010. Remember, that's in the final months of the Brown government. It shows Mandelson's executive assistant trying to arrange a visit to Downing Street for a friend of Jeffrey Epstein's. Hi, Jeffrey. I wrecked the following for Mary in Peter Mandelson's office. Is she referring to? If so, would you like to email to double check her phone number? And then we have the sort of meat here. Hi, hope you're keeping well. Jeffrey asked Peter if his friend could have a tour of Parliament or number 10 Downing Street. But I've left a couple of messages and she hasn't come back to me. Are you able to check her contact details? So this is really key. Jeffrey asked Peter if his friend, Jeffrey Epstein's friend, could have a tour of number 10 Downing Street. This is at the end of 2010, which would appear to indicate that Epstein had high levels of access to number 10, as well as, of course, Buckingham Palace via Prince Andrew, for at least a decade. Then there's this from 2011, when Epstein's PA sent herself a reminder. This is from Leslie Groff to Leslie Groff. This is before we had good project management apps and whatnot. Subject, alarm, remind Jeffrey Epstein might Woody Allen like to go to 10 Downing Street. It's like a sexual abuser extravaganza. Woody wraps filming around Sept 3rd. Remind Jeffrey Epstein might Woody Allen like to go to number 10 Downing Street. So remember, this is in 2011. That's after Brown is gone. Here's an earlier email from Epstein to his assistant regarding Downing Street. We don't know who this is from. To Jeffrey Epstein. Les, ask Woody if, on his way back from Rome, if you'd like to stop in at number 10 Downing Street in London. I think he would find it amusing. Fun people that speak English. This doesn't sound like a guy who'd last been at number 10 Downing Street 9 years earlier. He sounds quite familiar with the place. To me, anyway. It sounds like he continued to enjoy access long after Blair and even after Gordon Brown, after Labour had been ejected from office. If that is the case, how can it be possible that he only met Blair once? It's plausible, obviously. It's plausible. Anything's plausible. But from these messages and his assumptions, it would seem very surprising. Look, we've had lots of juicy speculation on this show tonight. Been really fun. It does seem really unlikely that Blair only met Epstein once for half an hour in 2002.
Yeah, it seems unlikely. It seems very unlikely, and I don't believe it. Is a simple way of putting that. I guess, quick thing about Kazakhstan, by the way, since you said it, I think I know where that money added value was going, and it wasn't going to Kazakhstan. It was going to Nazarbayev, the dictator in Kazakhstan, who at the time very openly said that Blair will bring legitimacy to his regime and legitimacy to the country. And the reason I think it's worth mentioning that is not to just be like, oh, I know that, his name was Nazarbayev. It's that Blair went to war remember, to circle back to what we were saying earlier, Blair went to war 5 years before he started his relationship with a brutal dictator called Nazarbayev. It wasn't as brutal as Saddam Hussein, we have to say that, but he did lock up his opponents, he did torture journalists and so on, and it was a one-party state. We went to war in Iraq and killed 1 million people. Yes, of course, because of spurious WMDs, but also because of human rights and liberal democracy and all of those things that were going to flourish in Iraq. So for Blair to then be consorting with Nazarbayev, taking his money, conferring legitimacy upon his brutal regime, and not just Nazarbayev, Paul Kagame in Rwanda, another tyrant towards the end, at least, of his tenure, it just exposes how utterly redundant any kind of Blairite claim to visional principles in international relations were. So, yeah, I think very likely he had a deeper relationship with Epstein. And I just say, of course, we're talking about this in a very kind of matter-of-fact way because we have to. We've got to analyse it. And there are moments that are funny, the Woody Allen stuff, the Ehud Barak stuff. But underneath, of course, all of this is a very, very ugly story about totally vulnerable victims who were just treated like cattle and hung out to dry.
I mean, including Virginia Giuffre, right? And she alludes to horrible sexual assault at the hands of a quote-unquote prime minister. People can draw their own conclusions, but there's only one prime minister that stands out in these in this data so far.
Yeah.
You can draw your own conclusions there. UK libel laws probably needs reform, right?